Mr. Warford.
What's up? Welcome to another episode of Updates with Mr. Warford. This is a lesson for my integrated social studies people. We've talked about types of government. Now we're going to get into economic systems. Notice, this is a lesson for multiple days. So when you see all the stuff posted in Google Classroom, you don't have to get that all done today. Check out the instructions so you know that this is a multiple day lesson and know when to turn stuff in. Our learning target, I can describe the different economic systems. So economics is just the study of how people make decisions, because in a world where we have unlimited desires and wants, we also live in a world where there's limited amounts of that stuff. So I would love to have a massive house, a really cool car, a horse, whatever it is that you want really badly, but there's limited quantities of that stuff and there's limited amount of money that you may have to get it. Countries and governments decide on economic systems to run their country's economy, and some are mixtures of different types. The three main ones that we're going to look at and that are going to be on your exam are communism, socialism, and capitalism. Lots of isms today, but those are the three that you need to focus on. What's the difference between a want and a need? A want is something that's going to improve your quality of life. So entertainment, going on a vacation, buying the coolest new iPhone, having a car that starts and takes you where you need to go. That is a want, okay? A need is something that you need for survival, food, clothing, and shelter. So supply and demand is also a thing that you're going to hear a lot about in economics. And again, we could have a lot of time spent on this, but we're just hitting the basics of these economic terms. So supply and demand is the amount of a commodity, product, or service, that's the supply, available, and the desire of buyers for it, that's the demand, considered as factors that regulate its price. So depending on how much there is and how many people want it will make the prices of a product fluctuate. Let's look at my example here of jeans, okay? And sorry my webcam is cutting part of this off, but I'll read it to you. So let's say a new style of jeans becomes super popular. Everybody wants these jeans. Everybody's on Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, and they're like, these jeans are the coolest thing ever. The designer ordered more of the jeans, but still has a limited amount to sell. So they were like, I don't know how these are going to do in the marketplace, so I'm not going to make too many. They find out that the demand is through the roof. So the designer says, if all these people want these jeans and I don't have that many, I can charge $500 for this pair of pants. And people are going to lose their minds and fight each other in the store for the pair of pants for the opportunity to spend $500 on a pair of jeans. Now flash forward. Things change a couple years later. People, you know how trends are. People maybe don't think they're as cool anymore, don't want to buy them, not as many people want them. So the supplier, the person who made the jeans, the designer, whoever, the company, they have stacks of these jeans in their warehouses and now nobody wants them. So to get rid of them and to try to turn a profit, they have to sell them on the cheap. So now a $500 pair of jeans becomes a $20 pair of jeans. That's the law of supply and demand. So economics essentially is just the science of decision making. We don't have the resources to get everything we want all the time, so we have to balance wants, needs. We have to realize how much of a product exists and what the demand for it is when we make economic decisions. So how does this relate to government and civics, you're probably wondering. Governments and in general have to think of these things, of how can we pay for national security, aid to poor families, education, producing food, and other programs that countries run to keep the economy going and to help people in need. How can we do all these things? Some governments are really good at that in some countries. Some governments have historically been very bad at that in some countries. But the reason we're focusing on economics is because governments have to deal with economics every day. So the three economic systems: capitalism, socialism, communism. I'm going to run through these really fast. Capitalism, private ownership of land, business, etc. Individual freedom, we have a competition for resources and it's motivated by profit and it operates on the basics of supply and demand. So in a pure capitalist system, okay, if you want to sell something, you can sell it. If you want to buy something, you can buy it. And in a pure capitalist system, that's how it works, okay? The prices are set by who wants it. You can sell and buy anything you want. Individual freedom abounds in a pure capitalist system. But keep in mind, no pure capitalist system exists. Socialism, okay, in its purest form, by the definition, socialism, there's some private ownership by citizens, but it looks at capitalism and it says, in that system, there's probably going to be a lot of people that do very well. There's probably going to be some people that are going to do not very well at all. Maybe they're born into poverty. Maybe they don't have the means to start a business. Maybe they don't have a job that pays well. So socialism is going to give government ownership to land, business, factories, things like that, things that are called the means of production, how you produce stuff in your country. The government is going to own that. And people can have private ownership of their property, private ownership of some businesses, but the government is going to help redistribute wealth, okay? It's motivated by narrowing that gap between rich and poor. Communism, on the other hand, is the idea that there's community ownership of everything. In a pure communist system, the government wouldn't interfere at all. You would have community ownership of everything. Everyone would share equally in everything. It's motivated by a classless, united, and equal society. Now, keep in mind, like I said, these are theories. These are ideas about economic systems. So there's been no example in history of a pure form of any of these. Things to keep in mind. Most countries are mixed. Like I said, none of them are purely one thing. There's some government control and there's some private property control. An example is the United States. You probably looked at those definitions and you said, the United States has a free market. The United States uses supply and demand and we can sell stuff whenever we want. Actually, the U.S., while we do operate on ideas of capitalism, it's not purely capitalist. An example of that would be the Food and Drug Administration. That is a government agency that regulates what foods can be sold, how you sell certain foods so that people don't get sick, what prescription drugs are in circulation, things like that. In a pure capitalist society, you could sell anything as long as somebody wanted to buy it. You could sell something that was actually detrimental to somebody's health, but if they wanted to buy it for some reason, they could do it in a pure capitalist system. In the U.S., we're not pure capitalists. The government does get involved. Also, something to keep in mind, there's never been a purely communist country. Issues with each system. So on their face, you're probably thinking, hey, some of these are pretty good. But there's issues with all three. Okay, so in a communist system, in a true communist economy, the community makes decisions. In most communist countries, government planners end up making decisions on people's behalves, though. It doesn't end up being just all for one and one for all. The government steps in at first, and they want to eventually make the community be the entity that runs the whole thing. There's no free market or supply and demand in the communist economic system. So there's less understanding of the price of goods. So if you don't know who wants something and how much of it there is necessarily, it's hard to figure out what consumers want. So this can lead to things like black markets where people sell things illegally that is not provided to citizens. And here's the other big problem with communism. If everybody gets an equal share of everything, one incentive is there to work harder. So if I know that I'm going to share something with everybody and I'm going to get the same amount of it every day, I'm going to work my same job and get the same amount every day, what incentive is there for me to really go for it and really work harder than everyone else? There may not be. And this can also lead to the rise of powerful individuals and dictators. So in the interim between, hey, the government's going to help us become a communist country, sometimes dictators will take hold and not want to give up that power to the community. So one thing to keep in mind is countries like China and North Korea are a lot of the times called communist, but they're not practicing communism in its true form, because communism in its true form would be that there was no government interference in anybody's life ever. The issues with socialism. Okay, the government has a lot of power in a socialist system, and this works as long as it represents the people well, the average citizen. But government leaders in a socialist system can sometimes abuse power, and have historically there have been instances of abusing power. And the biggest disadvantage of socialism is that it relies on the cooperative nature of humans to work. It ignores the fact that within society, some people are going to be more competitive and will do anything to get ahead in life. And they won't necessarily want that redistribution of wealth. They may say, I'm going to get rich right now. And then capitalism. What are the negatives of capitalism? Capitalism on its face, really good idea, or seems like a really good idea, right? Here's the thing. You have this system in capitalism of winners and losers, okay? The winners of capitalism, those that run large industries, those that are rich, those that are born into wealth, they have fewer competitive threats and may be able to rig the system. So an example would be supporting laws that benefit their industries. Not everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. If you're born into poverty, if you have some sort of disability in a pure capitalist system where you can't work like everybody else, if you don't have a valuable skill that's going to make you money, that can affect you in a pure capitalist system. And when the government's not involved at all in the economy, like in a capitalist system, monopolies can happen. And not the game with the guy with the mustache where you move the little pieces and you get the money. A monopoly is when a company and its product dominate an industry. So let's say, for example, I want to take over internet phone providing across the United States, okay? Cell phones, all that. Let's say I create this massive industry, this massive company that overtakes all cell phone, Wi-Fi, internet providers in the country. So AT&T's gone. I'm the big dog. I'm the person where everybody has to buy their cell phone. No longer is a cell phone $600 or however much a cell phone is. Now they're $6,000. And because I'm the only person that sells them to people, too bad. You either get one or you don't, because I'm the person that dictates the price. In a capitalist system, a pure capitalist system, monopolies can happen. The example that I use, an Easter egg hunt. In a free market, the free market is like an Easter egg hunt. The faster that you look, the faster you run, the more eggs you get. That's awesome. But what happens when it would be an Easter egg hunt between 6-year-olds and full-grown adults? Adults would be throwing haymakers, hitting kids, taking their eggs, and they would succeed more than the little kids because they just have more power, right? So that's the negative of a capitalist system. So keep those things in mind as you're doing those reading questions. Also, when you're doing the reading or doing some online research, maybe for a current event, you may see these terms. We're not necessarily worried about these terms except for mixed economy, because a lot of economic systems now are considered mixed. They feature the different forms of economic systems like socialism, communism, capitalism. There's a mixture. Okay, so keep those things in mind. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Remember, this assignment is multiple days, so shoot me a message if you need anything. Peace.